Hello and welcome back to Ensuring Success. We are on the final stretch of day 2 at Ensuring Success. This is the session on CAS services, which we're going to define and explain to you later. The session is called Don't Be a Casualty of CAS. This session is sponsored by Xero. I'm Gail Perry, Editor-in-Chief of CPA Practice Advisor magazine. Before we get started with this session, I'd like to take just a moment to thank all of the sponsors for this conference. We would not be able to pull it off without the incredible help of the following sponsors: ADP, Ace Cloud Hosting, CPA Charge, Avalara, BotKeeper, ComplyRight, CorePay, CoreV, Sage, SureLink, TaxFile, CPA.com, eFile for Biz, Intuit, VicAI, Wolters Kluwer, Xero, QX Global, Right Networks, and SafeSend Returns. So thank you to all of them for making this event possible and for allowing us to provide CPE credit to all of you who are attending today. Before we also get started, there are just a couple other things I want to point out. You will get an email from us within the next week or so that includes what we're calling our digital tote bag from this event, which includes sponsor offers and information and white papers and good stuff from all of the sponsors who are supporting this event. Also, the sessions that you're watching will be available later on our site, ensuringsuccess.com. It takes us about a week or so to get them uploaded, so be a little bit patient, and then you can start sharing them with all of your colleagues who were unable to attend. I'd also like to mention that if you scroll down your screen beneath the video window, there is a button that says Ask a Question. So if you have any technical questions, if you have questions about how CPE works, if you have questions for our speakers, you can enter that information in that Ask a Question box, and that will come right straight through to us. Also, speaking of CPE, I'd like to explain how CPE for this session works. So we will produce 3 CPE codes. They'll appear on the bottom of your screen, 1 code each at 3 random times during the session. It's your responsibility to write down those codes or take a screenshot or do something to memorize them. 3 different codes for the session. That's our evidence that you are staying with us for the whole session. Then at the end of the event, you can go to ensuringsuccess.com and click the Get Your CPE button at the top of the screen, and that will take you to another screen where you enter the email address you used to register for this event, and then all the codes you collected at all the sessions you attended, and then you can download your CPE certificates from there. So that is my housekeeping information. Now we'd like to get to our session. We have 3 exceptional speakers with us today, and Alexandra, who's my co-moderator. I'm going to have each of our speakers do a brief introduction. Our speakers are around the circle here: Gustavo Suarez, Tammy DeVinny, and Tate Henshaw, and then Alexandra, my co-moderator. So if you guys could each tell us just a little bit about yourselves, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Gustavo Suarez. I am with JPG. We're based in Houston, Texas. We're an accounting and finance platform that serves small businesses and entrepreneurs from across the nation. And thank you so much for the invitation. This is a great place for us to amplify our voice and tell you a little bit about our fails and a few successes.
Perfect. I'm Tammy DeVinny. I'm the Director of Accounting at Kane Waters & Associates in Plano, Texas. We are a financial planning firm who specialize in dentistry, and we're happy to be here.
Thanks. Tate Henshaw. I'm the co-founder of ARC Business Management in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm also a national Xero ambassador. And just like these guys, just happy to be here, thankful for the opportunity.
And I'm Alexandra DeFelice, Director of Marketing and Business Development for Payne & Fears, a law firm in Southern California, and co-moderator with Gail Perry these last 2 days.
All right, thanks everybody, and thanks for being here. So this session, Don't Be a Casualty of CAS, is about CAS, but we need to know what CAS is. So I think that term has been thrown around the accounting profession quite a bit the last couple of years, but I'd like to start with just an explanation of what we mean by CAS and what it means not only to accountants, but also to their clients. So Tate, why don't you start?
Absolutely. I think I've seen somewhere 20, 30 different definitions probably over time. Continuing accounting services, continuing advisory services. So you've got different C's and different A's. I've seen CAAS at different times. But for me, what it really means is we're having continual interactions with our clients versus, sometimes with compliance that could be only maybe annual or quarterly. But with CAS, I feel like it's going to be more, on a continual basis, much more touch points with your clients. And then from there, I think it could differentiate based off each firm. What kind of services are you providing? What level are you really trying to dig down to? Is it more customized? Is it more streamlined and sort of similar services? So again, it's many more touch points, though, when we speak to our clients, I think.
And how does this differ from traditional accounting services of audit tax? Any of you, Tammy?
I would think, just because of the relationship you develop with your client, we specialize in dentistry, so our clients are all in the dental field, and so it's creating that relationship so that you're providing them good financial information that they can use then to, make decisions about their business.
And I'll take that layered above. And please excuse me if I get a little bit philosophical. I know that we're just right after lunch, and everybody might be a little bit sleepy. So I welcome you to try some coffee, hopefully Colombian coffee. And but yeah, overall, I think it's giving ourselves a chance in this industry to breathe and to really understand what's happening out there, what the variables of the industry are occurring for us to react rapidly and be able to be part of this ecosystem. And let me give you an example. We have two great examples here. Tate, it's part of the music industry as well. And we were talking backstage about how he's able to understand and communicate with musicians. Well, guess what? He is a musician. And then we have the case here with Tammy about dentistry. So she hyper-focused into one community and became great at it. So I think the advisory services that we can extend to our clients is first understanding who we are, what we have in our immediate ecosystem, and then from there, amplify our message and connect with this community for us to be able to build sustainable and high retention clients. Mm-hmm. So that's just another way of seeing it.
Yeah, just to build on that, I think when you're comparing that to an audit or a compliance type task, those are where your clients are seeing you more as a vendor. I give you this, you give me this return or audit or whatever it may be, versus with CAS, the way we're all operating, it's more of them making current decisions, because audits, returns, all those things are historical, right? And so they're all looking backwards, and they can be used, that information can be used to make decisions, but it's not as impactful, in my opinion, as when you're able to provide current information. And that's what we're all doing, is we're all, communicating, this is what's going on now. These are changes that are happening. These are different things that you need to look at. And then they're able to use that much more readily.
And this is actually a good time for a poll question. We're talking about specialization, and the next session right after this is also about creating a niche, so stick around for that if you're interested. And we'd like to gauge the audience a little bit to see what your firm is focusing on. Are you focusing on specialty areas, or are you more of a generalist, or are you both? A lot of times people are generalists, and then they find, oh, wait, 60% of my clients happen to be dentists. I think maybe I should be a little bit more intentional about that. So we'll talk about that next session, but I want to see what the audience has to say. So we'll give you a couple minutes and we'll continue the conversation there.
All right. So Tate, you're talking about communicating with your clients and talking about what's going to happen in the future, or predicting or forecasting, as opposed to here's what happened in the past and I'll see you next year for your annual appointment. Mm-hmm. So what's that communication process like, and how does that differ from the traditional way that we communicated with clients so I have a tax practice, and for years it's always been, the annual meeting, and I give them the tax return, and it's see you next year unless you have some questions during the year, and waiting for them to come to me instead of me being proactive and going to them.
I'm going to actually give Tate a moment to think about that answer, because I think we have to take a short CPE break.
Well, think about that answer. We're gonna see just a brief message from our sponsor, Xero, and when we come back, we'll present you with the first CPE code for this session.
Accountants today face many challenges. Thankfully, Xero's cloud-based accounting software offers solutions.
Don't get me wrong, I love my job, but I am constantly having to fix incorrectly coded transactions made by clients.
Just use Find and Recode. You can save time by searching for and updating multiple transaction line items at once.
Problem solved. Beautiful.
Accountants today face many challenges. Thankfully, Xero's cloud-based accounting software offers solutions.
I feel like I spend so much time manually keying in data into accounting systems.
Ma'am, let go of the numbers. With bank feeds, you can automatically import bank transactions into Xero, so you can reduce manual data entry.
Splendid.
It's accounting made easy.
All right, we are back, and at the bottom of your screen, you should see the first code for this session. This is the code you'll need for CPE for this session. There will be 2 more codes later in the session, so altogether you'll get 3 3-digit codes, which you will need ultimately to claim CPE credit for this session. And Alexandra, I think we had some poll results.
Yeah, we do. It looks like 45% are generalists, 24% focus on a specialty, and 29% said both. So that's really interesting. Do you want to repeat the question? I'm sorry, Tate, I kind of just cut you off there so we could cut to our commercial, but Gail, you want to?
Yeah, so we were talking about communication with clients and how a traditional accounting practice might do once a year meetings with their clients, either year-end financials or tax returns in the spring, and unless the client reaches back to them, it's pretty much a see you next year sort of meeting.
Right.
So with a CAS practice, it's very different. How is it different in terms of how you communicate?
Absolutely. So, with the CAS practice, then we're doing more proactive communication. I think kind of what you described was more of maybe reactive, other than that annual meeting. And I want to be clear as we go on, like the compliance obviously is super important, right? And we don't want to discount that. It's the foundation of everything that we do for these CAS services. But with that communication, to me, we have to be a little more in listening mode, kind of what Gustavo was kind of talking about earlier, because if we don't understand what the client's goals are, then it can be very difficult for us to have that proactive communication and track, what they want to track. Maybe we're talking to a business owner, let's say they're a dentist, right? And Tammy could give more detail here, but if they're happy with their one practice and maybe they want more work-life balance, well, that would be one set of KPIs. But if they're, hungry to expand and want to have 100 locations, that's going to be a whole different set of KPIs or tracking or tools that we're going to be using, because they have vastly different goals. So that's where I feel like kind of differentiates versus the compliance portion is more of information gathering. We need this, this, and this to complete this task. But you don't have to get into where they're trying to go, if that makes sense.
And you use the term KPIs. Define what you mean by that.
So key performance indicators, kind of just a buzzword, but that's another thing, almost like CAS, where we have to define what does that mean for this specific client, or for our firm, what are we trying to provide? So it could be financial ratios, could be head count, could be budgeting, could be lots of different things. But really what I'm getting at is some sort of tool that we're using to track where our clients are trying to go.
We have a report that's called How Does Your Practice Compare? And so, if you're a general dentist with one doctor versus a general dentist with 2 doctors, you can compare how you your practice does against, all the other dentists that we prepare accounting for that is a general dentist with only one doctor. So it's kind of a good tool.
And how do you present that information to your clients?
We prepare a booklet and actually have a digital or a printed booklet for them. And then they can determine, if, I'd really like to be where a general dentist too is, and they can look at that and say, okay, well, that makes sense for me.
That's beautiful that you're mentioning this, because it's the power of data. I mean, we live in a world that oil and gas is not the big industry anymore. The big industry is data, and being able to not just have thousands of data sets out there, but just literally taking a deep breath and analyzing what's happening in your in-house, it can be way more powerful than getting the data that it's occurring at a national level. So I think for executives and CEOs in the dentistry space, that is a tool that, understanding it well, taking, as Tate said, just not accounting. Accounting is the past, is the rear view mirror. But what are we doing with that data to be able to make decisions for tomorrow and ahead of time? So that's when we implement the dashboards, we implement the KPIs to be able to make those decisions not solely based on intuition, as the majority of entrepreneurs will do, but actually saying, well, we have this data of what has historically happened to dentist practice in the past. So we are actually able to forecast that if you take this route, it's not going to be good. This is where you need to go. But I don't want to go that route. Well, sometimes it's not really where you want to go, but what your data is telling you, where your talents are allocated, and where the data is telling you need to go. So it's a beautiful dynamics that I'm hearing in this panel.
So I can totally get why this would work if you're specializing, and again, we'll have more on that at the next session. But if you are a generalist, how do you decide who to market these type of practices to? You're just gonna kind of throw it out there and see what sticks? Do you have to have these individual conversations with every single client?
Well, I think it's a great point that you bring up, because in my mind, you can be a generalist from a practitioner's point of view, because a lot of the services we provide, payroll, accounts payable, whatever it may be, those can be applied pretty easily to different industries, right? Mm-hmm. But when you get to the marketing space, that's where it's going to be a little bit harder, because all of a sudden you're going to be playing in a much bigger pool. I want to do bookkeeping. Okay. Well, lots of people do that for lots of businesses that have lots of dollars to buy Google ads or Facebook ads or whatever it may be, versus I'm doing bookkeeping specifically for dentists. I do however many hundreds of dentists. Mm-hmm. If I'm a dentist, that's going to stick out to me. So I think when you talk about marketing, you need to be very intentional about how you're differentiated from your peers. And maybe it's by industry, maybe it's by business stage, like a startup or something. Obviously, they have different needs than a later stage business. I heard people yesterday talking about owner-led businesses, founder-led businesses. Obviously, they have different than businesses with tons of investors and all those sort of things. So whatever it is, it doesn't have to be an industry, but I do think when you're talking about marketing, you need to figure out what is my differentiator. And so.
Yes.
Yeah, no, definitely. I have so many things to add. I mean, my mind is just going in several places right now, but let me just to add something. So I think the definition of being a generalist, it can be subjective to a certain point. So absolutely, we all have families and we have to pay bills. So at the beginning, the earliest stages in your practice, you're not gonna be really rejecting new clients. But organically, I think the synergies will occur, meaning that it doesn't necessarily need to be industry-based, but it could be cultural-based. It can be a behavioral base. So for example, in our practice, and we never planned this, it just happened to be due to our cultural relevance. We have conversations with immigrant community. We understand the struggle. We are immigrants. I opened my first business 2 weeks after coming to the U.S., and it was great. And then the second one, I failed miserably, and the losses were tremendous. So being able to open up, to be vulnerable with this community and say, hey, I thought that I was the overdraft kid at one of the large banks, and I thought that they had my picture and my name in there, right? But it's okay, eventually things start making sense, they start coming up together. So maybe connecting to what we've done is connecting to building wealth in America. We say, yeah, you're jumping into business because you have a purpose, you have a reason, you have a why, but ultimately we all want to make money. So let's talk about it, let's put the cards on the table, and let's organize how that roadmap is going to be. I guarantee you that most of the times it's going to be patterns that are occurring on almost every single case, that it's going to become almost a copy and paste. Absolutely. So you develop that roadmap, and then you start making it a repetitive process. It's going to be the same conversation with client oil and gas, same conversation with client in the retail space. So again, understanding the patterns and be able to build that repetitive process will help in the practice.
And just to cap that off, when you asked about marketing, when you figure out those copy-paste things, the pain points, sometimes we call them, that's what you market, right? These are the things I can solve for you.
I can fix it.
Right. Yeah. Because pain is going to move people more than anything. When the heat's on, that's when changes get made. So
what are you reaching out to your existing client base? Like, what are the talking points that you can have to say, like, if you're not offering additional services now, and they don't have any idea that you can do this for them, what are the talking points with your clients so that you can say the pain point? Like, because are you just going to start blasting newsletters to them that you never did before? Are you going to get on the phone? I think this is actually maybe a good transition into the type of person that should do these. I think that's something that you can talk about a little. Skill sets that aren't necessarily technical skill sets that you need to do these kind of things.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll kick it off. I'm sure there'll be more comments on that. But certainly one thing I want to be sure to mention is existing clients versus new clients is really a different process, because you have to understand your existing clients, if you're only offering compliance services, for example, they have you in a box. You're in this compliance box. I give you things, you give me a tax return, just a general example. So you're going to have to do some work to break out of that box, if that makes sense. However, it doesn't have to be this huge campaign and all these kind of things. There's still, I mentioned earlier, when we have these tax returns and different things that we're doing, you can glean insights from those. And if you get, the bank statements in and somebody's the overdraft kid, for example, maybe you see, hey, do you need help with your cash flow? We know they do. We know they need help with it.
And sometimes you're just making a comment like, God, they really need help with their tax.
And it's just a lack of education.
Yeah.
It's just giving entrepreneurs and small business owners, and sorry to interrupt you, but I want to make sure that I don't lose my thoughts. It's really giving the entrepreneurs the opportunity, to be part of the conversations, giving the opportunity to be part of the education. So it's not a lack of or negligence from their end because they don't want to do it. They just don't know. I had no idea that lines of credit existed. I had no idea how to manage credit cards. They're not teaching any of these in formal education. Yeah. And that's something, to your point, that can help. I think also connecting with local organizations, with nonprofit organizations. I mean, the Small Business Administration is investing millions of dollars national to be able to educate more entrepreneurs so they can have access to education on how to do business in the U.S.
Just another example, you see that they've written 10,000 checks in the last year, and you just say, hey, I just saw this. By the way, we do accounts payable services, and it's all electronic payments. We've seen our clients save X% of time when they switch over. it's really just making people aware of things. I think especially with existing clients. Obviously, when you're talking about net new clients, that's kind of what we were talking about earlier as far as what's my differentiator,
Right.
what's my market I'm trying to attack, all those kind of things. And then the second part of your question was about the type of people.
Yeah.
So I think sort of two things. Generally, and obviously we're generalizing a lot of our comments that we're making, but compliance people may not be as comfortable having those type of conversations with clients. So figure out how you can empower them to do those kind of things and also incentivize them to do those kind of things as far as exposing clients to new opportunities. And that may be arming them with white papers or some materials that they can just hand to people, say, hey, like my last example, we do accounts payable service. I saw you wrote a lot of checks. Here's a sheet. So you're really simplifying it for them. But then when you really move into this CAS as far as performing the service, you're really going to want to think about what kind of people you want to use for that, because
It's a lot of communication.
yes, exactly. The audit, the tax returns, you've got people who are super detail oriented, they're super analytical, and that's great and that's amazing. But when you're talking about someone asking a business owner about their goals, that can be a very unsettling conversation for that type of person. So we look for more people who are problem solvers, who are good at communications, because using the tools and the processes and obviously having these very talented compliance people backing them up, maybe we don't need the most technical person ever to kind of run with that. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, and that was actually our next poll question for the audience to see. We didn't have a check all that applies. So what do you think that the top characteristic is? I'm going to ask the audience, and then I guess you kind of touched upon it, so I'd like to hear you guys' thoughts. Is the number one characteristic of an accountant or a staff person to provide CAS services? Is it technical expertise? Is it communication skills? Is it deadline management? Because there's a lot of that going on with this as well. It's not just quarterly or annually anymore, or just unsure. So the question for the audience, and then I'll pose it to you guys. What do you think, Tammy?
Actually, first, before you say that, we need to take another quick break for a message from our sponsor. So we will do that, and we'll be back with your second CPE code.
Accountants today face many challenges. Thankfully, Xero's cloud-based accounting software offers solutions.
I spend so much time creating reports for new clients, running reports for current clients, and building the same reports for multiple clients.
You can help save yourself time with Xero by building smart, quality reports using customizable templates built to industry standards.
Sweet!
Accountants today face many challenges. Thankfully, Xero's cloud-based accounting software offers solutions.
I'm constantly straining my eyes having to match my bank account statement numbers with my accounting system.
With bank reconciliation, you match bank statement lines to existing transactions in Xero. If a transaction doesn't exist yet, easily create them on the fly during the reconciliation process. Happy?
Very.
It's accounting made easy.
Okay, we are back. The second CPE code for this session is on the bottom of the screen. So be sure to make a note of this if you're planning on collecting CPE for this session. Okay, and we have some poll results.
Hold on, I have way too many things open on this screen. Questions coming in, poll results coming in. Okay, maybe I might have just lost it in this. Just bear with me for 1 second. And while I'm getting to the poll result, the question was, what is the most important skill sets? It should have been kind of like, what are all of the skill sets? But since we couldn't do it that way, it's the question was about, what do you think is the number one? And the results are in for this. It's okay. Well, 62% is to communication. So maybe I might have kind of given them a hint on that. But 17% still said technical expertise. 11% said that they were unsure, and 9% said deadline management. So I was posing that question to you, Tammy, in terms of the skill sets, and then I think Gail had another question she wanted to ask.
For myself, I look at more of the person, at knowing that they already have the accounting skills. I want a person that's well-rounded, that's going to make sure that they have really good customer service and take care of the client. I think that's the most important, and that comes with doing a good job with your accounting skills, communication, technical skills. So it's kind of an all-rounded, but making sure customer service is one of the highest things that they strive for.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with you. I think, and I mentioned this from early stages in our business life, and 80% is the relationship. 80% is the relationship. It's the 80-20 rule. 80% relationship and 20% the actual work you do. So as an example, my background actually is in engineering. And some of my clients, they like, what? Yeah. I'm actually a petroleum engineer from the University of Houston. And but we understand business. We became obsessed with numbers. We became obsessed with finance, with unit economics. And of course, our staff are accountants and finance mainly. But the responding to an email, they don't teach that in college. The responding to a text message on the spot takes 5 seconds. Calling back your client. And I know it's like, okay, we knew that, Gustavo, can you please add some content to it? Okay, let's step back. Do that, and you're going to win your 50% of your client.
Yeah.
That right there.
Retention goes skyrockets.
Listen to your clients. And as you're listening to your clients, then allow yourself to what bucket, personality-wise, talent-wise, should I direct my client to what they need?
Exactly.
The actual economic benefit of it, the revenue, it's gonna arrive organically. Okay? So if we allocate resources and we move rapidly to what's happening today in the world, in the market, then we'll be able to make faster decisions. So it's very difficult for us to advise our clients if we actually haven't tried it. So it's like teaching someone how to swim, but I'm afraid of water. So being able for us to actually be in business as well, risk our money as well with other ventures, we can also give another perspective to our clients. And to end my 3 components of the answer is globalization. What just happened? There is a company, I'm gonna mention the name, right before COVID, they build a platform to where you can hire human talent from all over the world from your phone like this. What does it mean to your company? How can you leverage the resources to optimize your cost of goods sold, to optimize your operating expenses, your OPEX, right? And then at the same time, with the additional resources that you have, well, number 1, you'll be a happier person. And then number 2, you'll be able to add a bigger value to your end consumer. So those are just general ideas to digest and to implement to your practice.
Okay, I'd like to ground this just a little bit for our audience who might still be a little bit confused about CAS services and bookkeeping. And so what are we don't need a complete list, but what are the general services that you consider to be part of a CAS practice? And when you perform these services, what differentiates that from just basic bookkeeping, which like you might be doing payroll for someone and that's payroll and lots of people do payroll, but if you're calling it part of a CAS practice, what makes that CAS practice and not straight up bookkeeping?
So just a quick overview. We have services, bookkeeping services that start at $80 a month. Okay, few transactions in and out. we implement platforms like Xero, and we're like, yeah, we got it. We know how to use it. It's going to be super fast, so it can be a way of building a relationship with the client. As the client grows, then they're going to need the compliance services, which is payroll and tax, and eventually some audit work if needed. But then there is other products that we develop, which is our product number 2 and our product number 3, that requires more human talent advisory service. So how about we turn into meeting every year, and now we just connect every week? So we assigned a senior accountant that is gonna be hands-on with you. So we go from an $80 service to a $2,400 service. Okay, and clients that understand and are already educationally from an entrepreneurship point of view ready, then yes, they're gonna be able to leverage this resource from accounting firms that are doing these on a daily basis, that are gathering data sets from what's happening at the local and national level, and leverage these professional resource. And of course, your practice is gonna go from $100,000 revenues to a way much larger scale. And retention. Keep it, make sure that it's sustainable. Selling, no. It needs to be an organic relationship.
I think it has to do a lot with the complexity of the company that you're doing the books for also. So, a small company might not require what's a big, larger, we have a little small dental practice versus a big partnership with, 4, 5, 6 doctors. It's totally different, what's required on their part has a lot to do with it, so.
Yeah, I think, it goes back to our starting question of how do you define this, and I think we'd all love to have a little card that we just pulled out. Oh, check this box, check this box, and it's not quite like that, but to Gustavo's point, there are commonalities across many businesses or all businesses, and they can even be differentiated. To your point, payroll, there's payroll for compliance purposes, then there's also HR management, right? And you think from the outside looking in, well, those are the same. No, they're totally different, because now hiring talent, different states, we've got all this remote working, we're navigating rules for Georgia versus California versus New York for overtime, and the clients, that's something where they can just get totally bogged down and possibly even just not take advantage of the opportunity because they're concerned, I don't know the rules, I'm just not. And I think when you get to the heart of what we're providing, we want to cut through that and give them the information where if that's the right opportunity, they're not afraid of the complexity. We're able to, distill it down, and accounts payable. You could look at that as more of a compliance thing, or you could look at it as vendor management, procuring all the W-9s throughout the year so the client's not having to do all those sort of things. Accounts receivable, managing that whole process, I think is a fairly common CAS service to be provided. Expense management, receipts, company corporate card management, employee reimbursements, those are pretty typical. And then obviously there's usually always some sort of reporting component, whether that be a monthly pack, that could be a balance sheet, P&L, could be more complicated, some dashboards, some kind of consolidated reporting if they have multiple entities. Those would be kind of the services that are going to most often appear to me. But then if you do get into specific industry, specific types of clients, that could necessitate other things. Like if you're working with startups, I mentioned that as a differentiating factor. They may need help with their cap table, with all their investors, and that could really get them bogged down. Or like for us, we're doing tour accounting because these musicians are going on tour, so we're managing all the people, the traveling circus is kind of what I call it. So that's kind of a more specialized area. Could be the restaurant you're helping with the POS system. You see, so there's definitely commonalities, but then for specific clients, they may necessitate different tasks, and that's really where you're going to have to step back and think about where you want your firm to be. Do you want to go all in. And the downside of that is if you don't specialize and you're trying to give custom solutions to hundreds of clients, you can really burn your staff out really quick. Or, focus on those services that are more common and be really good at payroll, HR, people management, whatever we want to call it, expense management, accounts payable, accounts receivable, because those are going to be pretty common.
So here's where I'm going with this. So you're starting with basic services for your clients, but you're really taking them to a next level, which is some forecasting, your dashboards, helping your clients make future decisions based on your immersion in their business and the services you're providing. How do you write an engagement letter for that?
Let the attorneys deal with that.
I didn't know it was that easy.
So one of the things that I've learned in business in general, it's hyper-focus. Understand your ecosystem, understand who the stakeholders are, understand who the participants are, but also understand where your talents are, okay? And learn how to delegate. I used to be obsessed with no, that's not how you write an email. Look, let me show you. This is how you put this and that and that. Why? There's no need to do that. Let your talents take tasks, take responsibility, empower them, lead them, build some company culture, operational culture, and then from there, to answer your question, let the external partners, law firms, they have a lot of also small business clients. So you give them the opportunity to help you with the legal component until you can actually afford to have your own legal team, right? And then you don't have to deal with that. Delegating will help you and will empower you to focus on building products. You can't be building a product for every client that comes into your office. So you gotta have a specific products, and that takes months and resources. Maybe a CFO, maybe a product development manager. And then just doing that will help you to actually allow third parties to take the role on areas that you just don't want to be working in an agreement. And then at the end of the day, when you need to use it, the attorneys are going to tell you who wrote this.
We have one engagement letter that we use for all of our clients, and we just change our exhibit to include, what services we're going to provide. So it's all handled, and that makes it a lot simpler because you don't have to change the whole engagement letter for every time. So it works really well for us.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, our engagement letter is pretty general as well because, to your point, you could get into a lot of different areas, so we have to be very broad in our definitions and things like that. But I think don't use that as an excuse. To Gustavo's point, is 80% of it is the relationship with the client, and I think all of us can get bogged down in little details and, what if this went wrong, or what if this went wrong, but what if it went right also? And part of the engagement letter also is obviously pricing, so that can be challenging. I'm going to freak some people out probably, but we're actually on percentage of income with a lot of our clients, which is dictated by the industries that we're in. Athletes and musicians are used to paying their managers, their booking agents, their agents based off of that. So that's actually how we got into it, which works most of the time, because if they blow up and become bigger and we do more work, they pay us more money. If they shrink down, then they pay us less. But that's definitely something that if you're used to compliance and used to hourly charging, for example, you're going to really, in my opinion, want to step back and evaluate if that's the best way to move forward as far as providing CAS services.
So the relationship and grow with the client, grow with their families.
And we're also getting, just to pivot a little bit, we're getting some questions from our audience about how you choose the platform that you're going to use, depending on the tools you're using and how they all talk to each other.
Use Zero.
I had a feeling that would be your answer, but a little more detail.
At the beginning, we were skeptical with using Zero when we first heard about it, and we're like, should we use Zero or not? Then our team, of course, everybody is a little bit skeptical to change, right? And they're like, no, we're gonna use the green box, and then optimally, once you try it and you understand the system and you understand how technology can actually transform the time of working on a client's case, then yes, you realize how come I didn't use, let's say, for example, Xero, but there is a lot of applications that do things that, let's say, for example, Xero don't do, that will help you optimize the way you're doing business.
So is it pretty much add one at a time as you grow your client base or as you add additional services?
I think it's as needed, because, for us, the number of clients we have to have a workflow product that helps us know where things are in the process. We also have a virtual file cabinet, so it's kind of what do you need, because we all are remote, and so what do you need to be able to handle that? So,
I was going to ask about you being remote, and are all of you remote, or are you hybrid, or how do your offices work?
We've been virtual even before COVID, and we actually are the ones that have most of our talent in Latin America. And I said one day, well, if the large firms have been doing this for decades, why can't we, right? And at the beginning, it was like, I don't know if I want to work with you guys, but then it worked out, and then COVID happened, and then everybody's like, okay, well, it's normal, right? So we do have a physical office in Houston, but to be honest, I mean, it's just an office for meetings, because 90% of it's just virtual and remote work, and both sides, the consumer and the service provider, say, you know what, yeah, this works, let's just keep it this way.
And see, for the financial planning piece of it, to meet with clients, we're still we like to, because that builds that relationship. So we do like to do in person with that. But as far as doing the CAS accounting piece of it, that can all be handled, remotely. And you have the opportunity to make sure, everybody's like, well, I'm worried somebody's not doing their job, whatever. Well, based on production, you can tell whether your people are doing what they need to be doing based on their production.
Yeah, we could do a whole session on just applications or just managing remote teams, I'm sure. But it is certainly a different model. We're remote currently. We're getting an office that's going to be open in the next couple months, hopefully. It's interesting with contractors and supplies availability right now, I will say. But I've been working remotely since 2009, so it's definitely doable. And then just to return to your question about platforms, I think a couple things I would mention. Obviously, there's lots of information about all of these different platforms that's pretty readily available. So do some research, but also something that's super powerful is just interacting with your peer group. Find some groups on Facebook, this kind of community. Obviously, there's so many people that know so many things. Just ask the question. Don't feel embarrassed that I don't know. When you know what you don't know, that's like a superpower to me. So just be willing to reach out, and because there's people, we were at dinner yesterday, and there's people that know things I certainly don't know. So I'm just soaking it up,
Yeah, and with that, we do have to, I think, stop for our final CP break, Gail.
We're going to hear one more word from our sponsor, Xero, and then we're going to show you the third Cpe code for this session, so don't go away.
Accountants today face many challenges. Thankfully, Xero's cloud-based accounting software offers solutions.
Don't get me wrong, I love my job, but I am constantly having to fix incorrectly coded transactions made by clients.
Just use Find and Recode. You can save time by searching for and updating multiple transaction line items at once.
Problem solved. Beautiful.
I'm constantly straining my eyes having to match my bank account statement numbers with my accounting system.
With bank reconciliation, you match bank statement lines to existing transactions in Xero. If a transaction doesn't exist yet, easily create them on the fly during the reconciliation process. Happy?
Very.
I feel like I spend so much time manually keying in data into accounting systems.
Man, let go of the numbers. With bank feeds, you can automatically import bank transactions into Xero, so you can reduce manual data entry.
Splendid.
I spend so much time creating reports for new clients, running reports for current clients, and building the same reports for multiple clients.
You can help save yourself time with Xero by building smart, quality reports using customizable templates built to industry standards.
Sweet.
Client accounting services made easy.
Welcome back. We're going to display the third CPE code on your screen. So this is the third code you need if you're going to be collecting CPE for this session. So be sure to record this along with the others that we've given you during this session. So just before we broke, Tate was making some comment about just be sure to know what you don't know and don't be shy about admitting what you don't know. So that kind of brings us to this section of this conversation about the casualties, the potential casualties of having a CAS practice. So what happens when you realize your clients need some services and you want to be able to provide them with everything you can, but there's some things you just don't know how to do?
Yeah, well, it's definitely a potential pitfall, and something that unfortunately we've definitely experienced is you have to be very realistic about what your capabilities are, and you also have to be very realistic about your staff's capabilities and also your ability to add new things quickly. We talked earlier about the platforms. If I go out and maybe I learn from Tammy exactly what these dentists need, and I decide I want to do dentists, and I add all the 25 apps and tell my staff, hey, let's get trained up on this, we're going to start doing it next week. There's no way that's going to work, because it's just going to be so much workload and change management in that short of a period. When we switched to a cloud-based platform, I had to be very intentional about scheduling a realistic timeline for change, because I think we all want everything right now. Our clients definitely want everything right now. But it's really important to just lay it out and think about what's realistic, because to our earlier point, if you're doing compliance services and all those things already, that work doesn't just stop for you to go change your practice around. You don't want, to lose that quality. So managing that process and understanding that all change is going to take time, I think is very important.
I think it's just overall building that relationship with the client organically. You can't be pushing, well, now I'm billing my client this way, so let's overnight tell them that, hey, I changed the rules, so how are you today? And it's just, I don't think we got to put ourselves like in the shoes of the consumer, right? And in this sense, it's just build the relationship organically. Dive in with the client. At the end of the meeting, make sure to have a recap meeting. So what are the deliverables? What's the timeline? Set the right expectations and be transparent and honest. I don't specialize on dentistry. However, I have a great friend of mine who's been doing this for decades, whatnot. Let me give you the contact information. So doing that, the coin of honesty, then it will help you increase your retention and build a long-lasting relationship. And at the end of the day, that's what you're aiming for.
Yeah. Just like an example, let's say you see a big need with your clients for accounts payable, for example. You may not want to roll that out to all 500 of your clients tomorrow, but you may want to find 10 that you think could be good pilot, beta testers, whatever you want to call it, and maybe you want to say, hey, we're going to start providing this service. We would love for you to trial it out. We're going to give you a much discounted rate. And then you see if it really works. You learn, some of the problems. Yeah, you continue to refine it. And then when you're confident you can replicate that quickly, then maybe you go to the client base, then maybe you go external, that sort of stuff.
So one thing that's kind of a typical characteristic of accountants is that that desire to help your clients in any way possible, to the extent to your client calls with a quick question, and it's like, well, I can just answer that question. I can just do that in a hurry. I can just take care of that. And taking care of things for clients without actually setting it up as a service. So basically the concept of kind of scope creep. You just keep on adding, doing more things because they asked for it or they need it, and not really isolating that as a specific service. How do you avoid getting into that trap?
Charge for everything. You got to charge for everything and keep it within, in my opinion, 3 products. So our product number 1 is the compliance, the books, the payroll, the tax, franchise, sales tax, those are add-ons. Product number 2, then we go more into that advisory role, monthly reviews and whatnot. Product number 3, you need us on a weekly basis. So make sure that every conversation the client is sending some data. You need to be able to have the capacity to absorb that data, translate it into one of your 3 buckets, one of your products, and make sure that you are clear on, I believe this is the best fit for you, so this is a service that we're going to start or whatnot.
I think really educating your staff on how that works, possibly incentivizing them on upsell opportunities so that they understand, because if we do that as the owner, the partner, whatever it is, we know that's money out of our own pocket, if that makes sense. So we're consciously making that decision every time that we personally do it. But when our staff, who we've trained to be high on customer service, encounters that, they kind of have a conflict, right? And I think as managers, we need to understand that we're putting them in a position with 2 sort of things that don't go together all the time. It's kind of an oil and water situation. We want the client to be happy. That's always, always emphasized. But yet, we want to be profitable as a company, and so helping them navigate, I think it's just another opportunity for communication, because if you're not billing hourly, then that's another situation you could get into with kind of a black hole of staff time.
All right, well, we are out of time. I want to thank you all so much for your insights. I hope this was helpful to our audience who might be thinking about either growing or creating a CAS practice. And we will be back at the top of the hour with a session on creating a niche practice in specific industries. Meanwhile, we really want to thank all of our speakers for their time and insights, and we want to thank Xero for sponsoring this session. And we'll see you back at the top of the hour.
Introducing a restricted domain exclusively for CPA firms. Securing valuable data while mitigating risk. Enhancing clients' trust with a CPA-verified digital ID. Strengthening the firm's brand with a more relevant URL. Introducing .cpa, a new level of enhanced distinction and security. Watch a video, read a position paper, or secure your domain at domains.cpa.